Good morning, everybody. How are we this morning? My name is Ali Board, and this broadcast is going out live on Facebook as part of Technique Tuesday. Technique Tuesday being something that I do almost every week, not quite every week because sometimes my schedule gets in the way of things, but it's a broadcast that goes out on Facebook so that you have the opportunity to chat to me live, but it gets recorded as well so that it can go onto my blog or onto my YouTube channel. Now we're not going to talk about the weather today. We're just going to crack on with the demonstration. So how have you been? What lovely, beautiful, creative things have you been up to in the last week? I would love to hear about them. Stick them into the chat if you are watching live on Facebook. And if you are watching live on Facebook, then let me know where you are watching from. It's always lovely to hear from you. As you know, we're one enormous community that we like to support each other. And we've kind of all made friends now, haven't we? And it's really lovely. So who have I got in the room at the moment? Lots of people. Who we got? Patricia, good morning. Rosie, good morning. Heather, Maureen, Anne. Everybody just zipped past me as I did that. Alice, good morning. Rabina, good morning to you. Ali D, Anne, Val, Anita, good morning. Heidi is saying hi from Madrid. Hello, lovely. Thank you very much for joining us. We are truly international today. Yvonne and lots of people popping up. Irene, good morning. Haven't seen you for ages. Trudy is saying that she's been having a try with graffiti spray paint this week. Trudy, you must post it on social media. I would like to see that. Rachel is saying that she has been experimenting with oil, pastel, resist and watercolour this week. I love that technique. Oh, Rachel, do let us know how it's going. And Rosemary, good morning to you too. No matter how you're watching, whether you're watching me live or on catch up, you're very welcome indeed. Now, what have we been working on? We have been taking the theme that the All Aboard artists have been using for their month, and that has been South Africa. They've been experimenting with all sorts of things, animal silhouettes. What else are we doing? A desert landscape. We've been looking at animal textures with coloured pencil. Tomorrow we've got a rhino workshop. I mean, goodness me. It's all go. How else have who else have we got? Linda D is saying she'll watch later as she needs to walk Susie. Go. It's too warm to not walk your dogs early. I'm assuming that Susie is a dog. I know she is. Anne has been working on an applique fabric picture with hand embroidery. It's taking ages. Watercolour much quicker. You're absolutely right. Yes. Good morning, Fran. And Sandy, good morning too. Lovely to have you sharing your creative experiments this week. Now, talking of creative experiments and kind of getting going, did you see the news that I launched this week? If you haven't, don't worry, you're going to hear a lot about it, but let's share it with you right now. I am again for this year doing my 30 Days Hath September event. I've done it 3 or 4 times in the past. And this year I thought that it would be rather exciting to do it again. There's a lot more news to come with it, so keep your eyes peeled on my newsletter and on social media, because there's reasons behind the things that I'm doing. I just can't tell you about them yet. But I thought you might like to know, to kind of get it in your diary, about 30 days, because this time it's a little bit different. I try to change it ever so slightly every time I do it, but it always revolves around the same thing of me doing 30 art related projects every day for 30 days. But this time, as you can see there on the graphic, I'm doing 30 prompts, 30 minutes for 30 days. So there are the prompts that I have put up. I'll talk more about those in just a second. And they're going to take me no longer than 30 minutes. And I would encourage you, if you follow along with me, to not take more than that either. That way it doesn't become a chore. It becomes something exciting to look forward to. And obviously over the 30 days. Now, so Rachel is asking, I'm going to just pop back to my front on camera so I can say hello. Rachel is saying, looks intriguing. Is there a link for your newsletter, please, Alison? Yes, Rachel, pop over to my website, www.learningtopaint.co.uk. And what should happen is a little box should pop up eventually that asks you if you would like to sign up to the newsletter. Or if you go into the menu, I think it might be under the information tab, you can actually go to the newsletter and sign up directly. What I would try to do, somebody who's watching me live, remind me, text me, message me to put a link out on social media. Thank you for doing that. Good morning, Thea. What else we got going on in the room? Christine, good morning. Karen, good morning. Heidi's saying that she's been working on a coloured pencil portrait, but it's so hot for the last 6 weeks non-stop, and it's been hard to finish anything without dripping on it. Yeah, Heidi, it's pretty similar here. Let's go back to that 30 days. So the reason for these prompts, some of them might look a bit odd, some of them might look a little bit out of left field. It's because this event has had to fit in with all the other things that I have going on in my life and work. So some of them you might think like tree and music and stitch and those things. You might think, oh yeah, because those are the things that Ali does ordinarily, but there are some ones in out of left field going on. So things like Under the Sea and Cocktail and One Day Like This and Self-Portrait and all of those kind of things. So you don't have to do all of them. By all means, do all of them if you want to do all of them. But don't think, well, I'm not taking part in that because I haven't got 30 days. Just pick the ones you want to do. Do them retrospectively. Do them ahead of time. Whatever it is that you would like to do, if it means that I have got you being creative, then it works for me. All that I ask is wherever you post it on social media, so that could be Instagram, that could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, anywhere you like. Can you do two things for me? One is to tag me in it, so that will be the @ and Aliboard artist or Alison Seaboard, and that should find me. And the other is to use a hashtag. So just in case you're not used to using hashtags, the idea is that when anybody searches for it, that hashtag, if it's on your post, everyone will be able to see what it is that we've been doing. And that is the hashtag symbol and then 30 days hath September. No spaces, all shoved together. And I'll give you more information about how to do that. But it means that we can kind of all keep in touch with everything that we've been doing for that challenge. So it's quite exciting, isn't it? I'm looking forward to it. I haven't prepped all of them. Some of them I have. Some of them I have for when I am not going to be able to do them on the day, as it were. And some of them will be going out live because some of them will be connected to Technique Tuesday. So keep your eyes peeled for all of that information, and we'll get it to you soon. Who else we got in the room? Hillary, good morning. Martina, good morning. Pippa saying good morning. Hope you're all doing well and not too sunbaked. Yes, are a little bit. Right, now that we've talked about 30 days, shall we crack on with this little bit of gorgeousness? This lilac breasted roller that I started last week, and I'm going to push it on a little bit further this week. Now, you may notice some new additions to the kit because there was much discussion last week about keeping paper down, and as you can see, a few little bits of extra kit. The links to some of these things, to some of the equipment that I'm using, is all over on the blog. There is a link to that blog in the chat if you are watching me live. Who else we got? Morning Pam, morning Lou as well. So under here, I didn't go for a magnetic drawing board in the end. What I actually have got under here is a piece of steel that is magnetized, and I've clamped that under my non-slip mat. The reason that it's under, you're thinking, well, why do you need the non-slip mat now, Ali, when you've clearly got magnets on it, is because that shines like you wouldn't believe under the lights that I use for broadcasting. And I have my little, I've been calling them chess piece magnets. Of course they're purple. Of course they're purple. Why wouldn't they be purple? And so I've got those on there too. And then I found this little thing. This is quite interesting. So this is, well, it goes under all sorts of names, but it's the equivalent of having a piece of sandpaper. But this is a metal plate. Let me just grab a pencil so that you can see what it does. It hinges on my drawing board like an enormous great bulldog clip, and it's got a bit of a cup because you can sharpen the point of any pencil, graphite, pastel or otherwise, on this, and then all the little detritus falls into that cup, look, and then you can throw it away. Isn't that awesome? Wasn't very expensive either. The link to that is over on the blog, and it makes a nice sharp point on my pastel pencils. Heidi is saying, do you know how to flatten pastel mat? Mine has walked in the heat. Yeah, Heidi, mine has too. I have to say, actually, that weighting it down has helped flatten it back out again. It has helped it considerably. So I would stick it under something very heavy, a pile of books or something like that. Mine certainly benefited from being held down by magnets. It's not nearly as bent as it was, but yeah, pastel mat does not like the heat at all. So just to recap, if you want the link to that, it's over on the blog, as are the links to some of the bits of equipment that I'm using today. So should we crack on with this then? We've got the bird drawn out. I started that in pastel pencil last week, and we've got a combination of pale and mid-tone and dark pastel pencils depending on what we were seeing in the photograph. And as you can see, I've put the photograph up there for you so you can have a look at it and you can see what it is that I'm looking at. Heidi, you are making me chuckle this morning. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put a background in, and this is my favourite way of putting in backgrounds. It's not the only way of putting in backgrounds, but it is my favourite way. And so what I've got here are some pan pastels. I'll talk more about those in a second. And what's called a soft applicator. Now that's a brand name, and it's spelt S-O-F-F-T, okay? And it's a bit like a tiny little plastic palette knife with foam on the end. Now you can use any sort of foam. You could use eyeshadow applicators. You could use those funny looking teardrop shaped sponges like ladies or anybody might use for putting foundation on. I like these because this is the closest thing that I can feel I have in my hand to actually putting paint on. All right, so I've got one of those, and then I've got 3 colours of pan pastel. I've got, what's this one called? This one is called a phthalo green tint, quite pale. I know it looks kind of a bit bleached out in the camera. I've got every light available to get this lit up today. I've got this one, which is, I don't know if you can see, yes, you can see that, is pearlescent, a little bit of bling in there, pearlescent green. And this is a colour I use a lot in my work, and this is copper. So I've got those 3 colours, and they look like enormous great eyeshadows or powders. I'm just going to see if I can get the colour to read a bit better on that. No, this is a very, very pale green indeed. And then we've got the metallic green. There you go. That's a better indication of what it looks like. And then you've got the copper. Handy hint of the day, don't drop these, they shatter. And then you just end up with a load of powder. And what I'm going to try to do, those of you that know my work well will know that in watercolour, I'll talk more about that in a minute. In watercolour, I like to have a vignette background. So I like to have those soft edges to my work. And this is the closest thing. Now, what's Fran saying? Fran is saying, Ali, can you move the photo down a bit, please? The head is hidden under the live logo. Okay, let's see if we can do that live in the thing. Can I do that? Let's see. Is that better, Fran? I mean, goodness me, I've never tried that before. Is that better? Let me know. Let me know if that's better and not hidden under the live logo. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Someone's giving me a thumbs up for it, so I'm hoping that's okay. So I'm going to apply the pan pastel so that I get that kind of nice, soft variegation in the background. And I'm going to do that with my soft applicator. I'm going to start off with the pale colour. And I'm going to try to put the pale colour where I want the bird to be dark. Excellent. Good news. news. Really, really good that the photo has moved. So I'm loading up that soft applicator, and the first thing I'm going to do is just put it down very loosely in the background. I'm going to go over the edges of my bird because I don't want there to be a nasty kind of gap between bird and background. Now, where else is my roller dark? Kind of under here. So we'll put some in. I'm using a very light, very soft touch, not pressing too heavily at all. If I start to press too heavily, the chances are I'm going to end up with marks that I don't necessarily want. So we'll put some of that down under here. Now we need to put some of it over on the right hand side, but I don't necessarily need it near the bird yet. So let's dust a little bit of that back in. And then we're going to the pearlescent green, which is a kind of mid-tone green, and it's very blingy. It's really, really blingy, but I don't dislike that. Let's get that in. Where else do I want this? I don't want it. I don't want it up by the head because the head's green. So let's get that in. Ooh, that's a bit 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it? Let's get rid of that. Can't be doing with even numbers of things, can we? Loading my soft applicator up all the time with things. Let's go over here. Where do I want it over here? Probably can afford to get a bit closer to the bird over here. Let's get that in. And I definitely don't want, I do want green here. So let's push that out. And then let's go to the bronze. Oh, excuse me. Obviously talking too much this morning. So I haven't cleaned the applicator or done anything any different with it. I'm just smudging it in and on to the background. And yes, some of you I can see in the comments are loving the pan pastel. What's not to like? I do just adore the way that it goes on. It's the kind of a bit of a compromise between watercolour and pastel, really, and I think that's why I like them so much. You need to get to grips with them a little bit. They can be a little bit tricksy, and when we've done it in workshops and things before, people have said that there's a bit of a knack, but there's a bit of a knack with everything, isn't there? Where else do I want some of these? Let's break up some of this green down here, so let's get that in, and we'll get other colour mixes going on between the copper and the greens that I've already laid down. And what else do I want? I don't want too much brown down here, but also I don't want to sort of neglect the fact that otherwise if I don't put a sort of a nod to a bit of the brown down at the bottom, then it will look disjointed. Now I've got a horrible ball sort of line there, so let's go back to the green and let's push that out a little bit. And then I can start to go around my bird and soften some of the edges as they make their way out towards the pastel mat. So we'll get those in, we'll get it blended a little bit more. I like the dynamic quality that pastel mat gives me as well. I think the movement that you can get out of the pastel mat works really well. It kind of gives that sense of place, gives the idea that our bird is really kind of in an environment. So I think I like that soft, that's all good. Anne saying that she's loving how the pan pastels are going on. Good morning, Sue. Please don't ever apologise for being late. Let's put the lid on those before I smash them, and I'll talk to you about this feather. So I have absolutely no idea whether this is a technique that I've seen somewhere or appropriated, or whether it's mine or any of those kind of things. But I get very kind of caught up in my drawing, and then I either try to dust away any excess with my hand, which is usually not great in pastels because you either end up covered in it or you end up smudging it, or I end up blowing it. And if you blow it, that's so dangerous, not only because you don't really want to pebble dash whatever is around you in pastel, But also these are pigments, okay? They're not dangerous, but you don't want to be inhaling them really. Good morning, Joe. Rabina is saying, yes, I use the Pan Pastel colourless blender on the background, which helps with the softness. Certainly does. And good morning, Dawn, too. So what I do to dust things away, I've just, I always have a pot of feathers somewhere in my studio. The feathers usually have a story behind them because everything I do has a story behind it. And so those of you who follow me on social media will know that I have a flock of beloved chickens, and this is Buffy's. This is one of Buffy's wing feathers because they're all going through a molt at the moment because the weather's so hot. And this is one of her wing feathers, and I've realised that I can dust this on my surface. I can get rid of any kind of excess, and I haven't ruined what it is that I am doing. So I can't, if you find a nice wing feather or a pheasant tail feather or something like that on a walk, then grab it and you can use it for dusting. Very useful tool. I've been using this a lot in some of the new video content that I've been filming this week, so it's kind of sat on my desk permanently. Now that we've got the background in, before what we're going to do next week, in next week's Technique Tuesday, is we're going to be looking at using pastel pencils. Now I could go in with pastel pencils now and start to effectively block in, but that's going to take me too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use pastel sticks. So this kind of thing to block in the colour so that then my bird's going to look like it's in a bit of a fog, and then next week we will bring it all together. Now the way that I choose my pastel sticks is I go to my pastel box with my photo reference and I pick them out. Now I am very fortunate, I'm a very fortunate girl in that I have a lot of pastel sticks. So I can choose lots and lots of colours. I've got sticks that I've bought, I've got sticks that my mum has given me from her pastel collection, various things that I've written about or demonstrated. So I have quite a big collection. Now you might think that that is a big advantage. It isn't necessarily a big advantage, because the more colours you have at your disposal, the more work you will need to do. And I have to say, pastel paints are a bit like watercolour, pastel sticks are a bit like watercolour paints. The more you have, the more you want. Now, as you can see, I've got a selection here. Let's just show you some of the brands. I've got some SAA soft pastels here. I've got a couple of Faber-Castell pastels here. I've got some De La Rowney pastels here. And I've got Unison. Now, Unison are my favourite. I think you will find that an awful lot of pastel artists really favour Unison. They're handmade, they're almost pure pigment, so they're very soft. Pastel Mat does eat them up, mind you. They're not the cheapest things in the world, and any pastel stick, one of those, the greatest things about pastel is that you can combine the brands. So it doesn't matter if you've got cheap ones and expensive ones. It doesn't matter if you've got very soft ones and very hard ones. You can combine them all together. So the Faber-Castell, which you can see is a square stick, is much more compressed and much harder, but by the same token I'm going to be able to get more detail out of that. The Unison, which is very beautiful set of colours and is very soft, isn't great for doing tiny little detail. So everything has its place, and I use them in this little bamboo bowl so that I can be pick and mixing my way around them. I've got far more colours here than I need, far more colours. What I did was go through my box and kind of go, yeah, I'll have a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. So that is why I've got this huge assortment to one side. So let's have a look at what people are saying. Heidi is saying, are those quite soft sticks? I have Conte pastel sticks, which are hard and dry. Yes, so the Conte ones, I'm assuming you mean the square ones, Heidi. They are brilliant for detail. So if you wanted to go back in and get the feather texture and you didn't necessarily have pastel pencils, those things are fabbity. Rosie is saying Unison are the softest, I believe. They certainly are of the pastels that I have come across. Lots of people saying that they love unison pastels. Sue is asking a very interesting question. Do pastels keep okay? I have an ancient tray of them, must be 50 years old. I have got pastels that are, I wouldn't say that they're 50 years old, but they must be at least 30, 35 years old, and they're absolutely fine and dandy. I keep them in the dark. I don't let them get damp. But do you know what, Sue? Test them out on a piece of paper, see if they're okay. Stick them in a sunny window and make sure that they are still light fast. I can't believe that they won't be, because this type of painting is kind of quite basic if you think about it. Thousands upon thousands of years ago, our ancestors were using charcoal and pigments straight from the ground onto the walls, and those have remained absolutely stable. So I think you'll find that they're absolutely okay. So I've got my little bowl of deliciousness over to one side. Some of the pastels, this is one of the frustrating things about pastels, unless you are completely obsessed with keeping a note of the colour, and even though I am obsessed with keeping the note of the colour, you will find that there are sticks that you have lost the paper of, or didn't have paper around them in the first place, so you kind of end up having no idea what the colour is. It is particularly frustrating if you find one that you like. This is one of my favourite unison pastels, and every time I have to remind myself which colour it is, because this is brilliant for a lot of the animal portraits that I do. Jan is saying, I use a mix too, Carbothello pencils, a few unison, WH Smith, etc., as each has its own uses. Yes, so you can see from the advice that we're getting in the room that a mix is certainly a benefit. Now, one of the other things that you've probably noticed is that your hands are going to get filthy. I would have a towel or something dry nearby that you can clean your hands off with. Don't wash your hands or use a baby wipe until the end of your session. Otherwise, your wet fingers are going to transfer to your pastels, and then you're going to be in trouble. So pastels that I know, pastels that I don't know, and everything in between in that bowl over there. So all we're after at the moment is blocking in. We're not after any detail. We're not after anything particular. We're just after saying this bit's green, this bit's blue, etc. Heather's saying, I have the full unison colour chart, which is actual pastel samples you can match up exactly if you've lost the wrapper. Heather, I did not know that that was a thing. So I need to go and purchase one of those, because I need to discover what that colour is. Thank you for that. Heather is always a fount of all knowledge. So let's get cracking with this blocking in, shall we? I'm going to start at the top. This, I definitely know which one this is. I treated myself to this set of unison last year for my birthday. I always treat myself to something artistic for my birthday. And this was what I did last year. This was their ocean selection, which I find hysterical now, because the ocean selection is being used on a bird. Now, got the green in there. Does that green occur anywhere else? No, it doesn't. So let's switch to a little bit of white. We'll get that blended in and up and over. Where else are we going with this? We've got a bit of grey, definitely white above the eye. And then we need, actually I'm going to keep this in shot so that you can see what I'm picking and how I'm picking it. We need another grey to kind of go in between those two areas up there. What else have we got going on? We've got a little bit of that grey down here in the wing. So I'm looking for patches of colour. I have also got a ridiculously itchy nose. Why do I get an itchy nose when my fingers are covered in pastel? Answers on a postcard, please. So I've got that grey coming down the wing. Got a bit of grey on that beak. So you can see I'm losing the detail, but what I'm doing is laying down lots of colour that's going to be useful to me when I come to do the detail later on. Let's go to the sort of peachy colour that I chose for under the cheek. These colours aren't all exact at the moment, they're just close. It does look a little bit brighter in the camera, I've just noticed. That's all right. I have the contrast turned up quite high so that you can see it nice and clearly. Let's go for, now was this the yellow that I thought was too bright? I can't remember now. Let's go for the yellow down the back. Yes, it was a bit too bright, but it was the right tone. So sometimes you might not have exactly the right colour straight away. Sometimes you might have to compromise and mix it with another colour, which I'm going to do by snapping the end off this SAA colour and going back in and adding something so that when we get to blending it all together, it's going to work. Yes, dust does equal itchy nose, Rabina. It's just typical, isn't it? Right, let's go for the purples. Not why I chose this bird, obviously. Haha. Let's block some of these in. Ooh, this is a nice one. I bet that's a Dale Rowney one. They are particularly soft as well. Rowney has a very good history of creating pastels. They are some of my favourites too. So I'll get that lilac in. I know it's not dark enough yet, but that's all right. We'll get that blocked in. It needed a little bit of pink. Now this is an old Rowney pastel stick. You don't get them this narrow anymore. They're much thicker than this. So that is definitely an old one. And we had a little bit of pink going on in amongst the lilac-y purples that we've got up there. So I can block that in too. I know it looks glow in the dark at the minute. It's all right. We'll get there. Then let's go back to our greys. You can see I tend to clean them off on my finger. If your pastels get very dirty, I kind of section mine up in my pastel box so that they stay clean. But if they get very, very dirty, you can put them into some rice in a sieve and shake the sieve around and the rice will clean them. Heather has put a link to that unison chart. I'm going to certainly pop over and see if I can purchase myself one of those ready for next week. That would be good, wouldn't it? Heidi is saying, I'm going to look at the unison set. I have a good supplier near me in Madrid. I found ordering them from UK is a problem as I get slammed with the postage. Yes, Sennelier are good also. Jan is saying, yes, I think I have got some Sennelier in my box somewhere, Jan. In fact, some of these might be Sennelier for all I know. I've just, as you can see, I've lost the wrappers. Rembrandt are very good as well. I used to use, when I was sort of teaching myself how to use Rembrandt, I used to use those a lot too. Oh, loads of information coming our way today. What I am going to have to do is stick a magnet underneath my pot to stop it sliding. Look at that. Things that I have discovered this week. It's been quite the steep learning curve. Right, let's get to that lovely Kingfisher blue. Now this one was a unison and it's already shattered. So that was a bit of a shock. You really don't want to drop your pastel box or anything like it. Dear, right, let's get some of this blue in. Bizarrely, this kind of what I would call Kingfisher blue. And we'll get that in. No detail, don't forget. All we're after doing at the moment is blocking in. And then we need the darker version. I tend not to break up my unison pastels, mainly because it makes me cry. If they break of their own accord, then I will do, but I tend to avoid it a little bit. Just because if you've spent a lot of money on a very expensive pastel, the last thing you want to do is snap it up. I understand that. Let's get that in. Community live on Facebook, working like a charm today with people swapping advice. So that's lovely to see. Thank you to everybody who is taking part in that. What we got going on over here? A bit of dark in there. I probably need a darker. I realised when I was going through my pastels that I don't have a dark enough blue. So that's one that's gone on the wish list. Going back to my grey, let's go to this grey, I think, to get some of, that's a better colour, to get some of this in, and working our way down under here. Can't really do the feet because my pastel isn't fine enough. I've completely neglected the beak, but that's okay. We'll get some of that colour in up and over. This is usually the point where I lose the will a little bit because I have to make a mess to make it better. And it is a little bit disheartening, I think, sometimes. You can look at, you've gone through all of that rigmarole to get your bird onto the paper, and then effectively you're colouring it in and getting rid of all of it. So I understand how that can be a little bit disheartening. I've got this lovely, this is a colour I use an awful lot, A19 in Unison. It's you're probably not going to be able to see it in the camera, but it's like a very pale pinky grey, really useful for bird and animal portraits, because it's not white and it's not grey, it's sort of somewhere in between those things. And I noticed in the feathers there's quite a few highlights of this colour. So that got cracked out again. I bought myself a new one, and then of course it broke. So I've got little bits of a new one. But like I said, still none of it as depressing as when you break a pan pastel. Because that just goes everywhere and shatters. Right. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've blocked that in. I think I've got enough on there. I am filthy, which is usually a good sign. Now, I could use my soft applicator. I'm actually going to use a tiny little brush. This is an old nylon brush that is no good for anything. And what I want to do is, you can use a paper stump for this as well if you really want to. I'll be using a paper stump more next week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go round and I'm going to start blending some of these colours in. It doesn't really matter what order you do them in. You can start at the top and work down, or however it works for you. It really doesn't matter. And what I'm after is pushing the pastel into the pastel matte surface and getting rid of, or starting to get rid of, some of the marks that the pastel sticks have made. I think some of you are having a few issues with your technology. I don't know what that is. I don't think that is my end. But if you are watching this live and it's not happening to you, would you just be kind enough to help out or give advice to anybody who is having trouble with their tech this morning? Blame the weather. I blame the weather for lots of things. So I am very much getting bird in a fog now. But that's fine. This is like an underpainting. This is going to go underneath the pastel pencil work that I'm going to do next week. And it also helps to push the boundaries a little more for where one colour blends into the next. So rather than it looking very kind of broken and blocky, I get a little more subtlety out of it. I don't want to touch the eye particularly. And then we can bring that colour down. We've kind of got that wall in the chest going on and smudging it that way. That purple is softening a little bit now, which is helpful. I've sort of neglected, this is also a good point to, if you've sort of forgotten bits of it or some of it's not working. Yes, absolutely, Heather. You can use cotton buds for softening. The reason I'm not using cotton buds, I did think about it today, the reason I'm not using cotton buds is because Pastel Matte absolutely shreds them. And you go through far too many of them. So I use my little trusty nylon brush. You can use a bristle brush as well, but I'm trying to get away from bristle brushes myself because I'm trying to use vegan products wherever I possibly can, and obviously a bristle brush isn't. So I've realised that the nylon brush still works absolutely fine for this technique. So that's what I've stuck with this morning. Let's be a bit careful round the front of the chest because we don't want to kind of make it too big. We don't want to make it too puffy. I've lost a little bit of definition there, but I can regain that next week when I go back in with the pencils. And then using it down the side of the wing and on the undercarriage, going into that tail shape. We've got a bit of nonsense going on down here. I don't quite know what's going on down here, but we'll worry about that next week. Now, what's going on in there? I've got a big blank space. What's that all about? If you've got a big blank space, the best thing to do, fill it with colour. That's better. Why didn't I do that the first time? Now, I haven't put the twig or branch or whatever it is that the bird is sitting on. I can do that in pencil next week. That is not important. Don't like that shape. That looks far too twee. So, whoop! Oh, dropped it on the floor. It's still okay though. Let's spread that shape out a little bit. Let's get that moving. That's better. Getting that in. Now look at all the dust that we have. So let me give you a handy hint when you've got a lot of dust, what you can do to get rid of it safely. So I'm going to take my magnets away. I'm going to push my drawing up a little bit. I'm going to reach over to my right hand side because I have some baby wipes here. Now these are bamboo baby wipes so that they are biodegradable. You can equally use a damp towel or a piece of kitchen roll that you have spritzed. And then what you do is you pick up your picture, you bang it, just the edge of it, onto the baby wipe, and then that collects all of the pastel dust there, and it's not going to go anywhere. And then you can clean your hands up at the same time. Baby wipes, I try not to recommend them unless they are the bamboo ones, because they are a bit of a scourge if you can't get hold of the biodegradable ones. But they do re-moisturize your hands as well, because pastel can suck the life out of them if you're not careful. Then what we've got, we can just give it a little bit of a light dusting over the top just to get rid of any excess. What is that going on in there? Don't know what that little blob is, so we'll get rid of that. We can give it that light dusting. And there we have our lilac breasted roller all blocked in and ready to accept our pastel pencils next week. Now this is a sort of a fast version of what I would end up doing, because it's for a broadcast, because I can't be self-indulgent and I can't sit here for hours on end messing around with it while you're just watching. So if you are having a go at this or having a go at a similar project, spend more time understanding where your colours are going. Spend more time kind of getting it blocked in. I've just done the speedy version of it so that you can see it nice and easily. Right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that gives you a greater understanding of how to get your paper onto your board, about sharpening. Some of the products that we've been using, like the pan pastels and the soft applicators, and understanding a little bit more about pastels in stick format, the difference between the brands, all of that kind of stuff. So, and the blending too, with the trusty old horrible nylon brush that is no use to anything else. And also the inclusion of a buffle feather. Very important in one's project. Perhaps I should get Buffy to donate them to everybody. That would be good, wouldn't it? I don't want a bald bird. Right, thank you very much for your kind comments. We've got a few questions just before we part company today. Patricia is saying, do pastels have to dry, as it were, before adding extra on top? No, Patricia, you can. That's one of the joys of them. You could just rattle straight on with it. So if you were doing this project from start to finish, I wouldn't be stopping at all. I'd be, putting my background in, putting in the pastels over the top. There are lots of techniques that you can use where you wet pastels, but that's another broadcast for another day. And you can just crack on with it, which is good sometimes, isn't it? Because sometimes you don't always want to be sitting around and watching paint dry. People saying that it's useful information. Heidi is saying it's the first time she's joined us today. Excellent. Heidi, thank you very much for taking the time to tune in. It's lovely to have you here. Don't forget, all of you can join the Learning to Paint Facebook group. So there's two different Learning to Paint things. There's my website, www.learningtopaint.co.uk. That's where you get all the news about how you can join me for classes, the blog, bits of materials, resources, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's Learning to Paint, which is the Facebook group. That is a community. You have to join it. I have to okay you joining it, just so that we can try to keep some of the ridiculous trolls out of it. but you can request that. There are links to that in this live chat. And go over to that fabulous community and take part in it. Thank you for joining me this morning. Yes, Anne is saying, keep cool and well watered, everybody, as it's going to be hot. Keep yourselves and your animals, any animals that there are in your life, very safe indeed, because I think the next few days are going to be a bit of a struggle. But join me next week for another Technique Tuesday, where we'll be going back over this and using pastel pencils to bring out the detail. Don't forget that learning to paint, let's just quickly flash that up for you. Don't forget to stick that into your diary, sign up for the newsletter, watch my social media just to see what it is that I'm going to be doing. And I would love to be able to see what you are doing as well with that hashtag 30 days September. So lots to look forward to in the coming days and weeks. Take care of yourselves, won't you? And I will see you very soon. Take care, lovely people. Bye.